Assalamu alaikum everyone, this is Ayman Nazir and welcome back to Knowledge Realm. Students, we are studying pre-partition history of Pakistan and today we are going to cover a very important topic from pre-partition history of Pakistan. I'm talking about Allahabad Address of 1930. We would cover this topic today in detail. We would try to understand it and in addition to this topic, students, we would study the role of Allama Iqbal in Pakistan movement and Allama Iqbal's philosophy of Islam and Muslims of India. We're going to study this also. So stay focused and let's get started. So students, here is the brief introduction of Allahabad Address 1930. This address was presented by Allama Iqbal. Allama Iqbal presided over the annual session of All India Muslim League on December 29, 1930. This was 21st annual session of the League and Allama Iqbal presided over this session. The session held at Dwazdah Manzil in Allahabad city and the address is called Allahabad Address because it was presented in Allahabad city. Students, in this address, Allama Iqbal for the first time gave the idea of a separate Muslim state for the betterment and for the development of Muslims of India. Allama Iqbal was the first person to give this idea from the platform of League publicly and he gave this idea in the words that I've mentioned here. This is the soul of Allahabad Address. I'm going to read it here. Allama Iqbal said, I would like to see the Punjab, NWFP, Sindh and Balochistan amalgamated into a single state. Self-government within the British Empire or without the British Empire, the formation of a consolidated North-West Indian Muslim state appears to me the final destiny of the Muslim, at least of North-West India. Students, in this address, Allama Iqbal is saying that a separate state is the final destiny of the Muslim of India. So, in other words, he is actually giving the idea of Pakistan a separate state for Muslims. Allama Iqbal in this address stressed the role of Islam in the life of Muslims. He promoted the idea of Sir Syed Ahmad Khan and Sir Syed Ahmad Khan's idea was actually two-nation theory. Sir Syed gave two-nation theory. He asserted that Hindus and Muslims are two different nations, so they cannot live together in a single state. So Allama Iqbal also viewed India as a continent where two different nations were living. Allama Iqbal explained the nature of Islam in this address. Allama Iqbal said that Islam is not like any religion that people practice in western part of the world. Islam is a complete code of life. Islam gives its own social system, its own political system and its own economic system. So Muslims cannot live in a state where they cannot implement all these systems of Islam. So this is the reason that Muslims need another separate state. Allama Iqbal said that in Islam, church and state are not separate like people practice in western part of the world. So Allama Iqbal emphasized on two ideas in his address. One, that Western political system cannot be implemented in India because Islam is a complete code of life and Islam gives its own political system. So we cannot implement that system in India. Then, second point that he gave in this address was that in India, Muslims cannot live happily because in India, Muslims were in minority and it was not possible for Muslims to implement the Sharia law in India because India was inhabited by Hindus majorly. So these 2 points were presented by Allama Iqbal in Allahabad Address. This was the brief introduction of Allahabad Address and students, in the next slides, I will definitely explain these points in detail. Students, before starting the Allahabad Address in detail, I would like to explain a little bit about Allama Muhammad Iqbal. We should study the background of the person who gave this address, and we should study the role of the person, Allama Muhammad Iqbal, in Pakistan movement and what was his philosophy about Islam and Muslims of India. So starting with the background of Allama Iqbal. Students, Allama Iqbal was the greatest philosopher and poet of that era. He's called Shair-e-Mashriq. He was born in Salient. He studied philosophy. He got his degree of doctorate from Europe. And when he was in Europe, he observed the political, social, and economic life of Europe and tried to analyze the systems there. He tried to find out the evils of that system. He observed all the evils and all the good things also. Then he tried to awake the spirit of nationhood in Muslims of India through his philosophy and poetry. He was the first person who courageously gave the idea of a separate state for Muslims of India from the platform of All India Muslim League. This was the brief background and introduction of Allama Muhammad Iqbal. Alright students, now we're going to study Iqbal's view on Western political and economic system. Students, I've explained it in the previous slide that Allama Iqbal had spent some time in Europe. He received his degree of doctorate from Europe, from Munich University, and when he was in Europe, he analyzed the political, social, and economic systems of West. He analyzed these systems and he understood the evils of Western political and economic system. He criticized these systems. Students, we all know that in West, although the economies of the countries are skyrocketing, the economies are very developed, but the social system is completely destroyed. They do not have a good social system. In West, parents do not care about their children. Children are in orphanages, and children also do not care about their parents. Parents are in old homes. When children turn 18, they move out and they abandon their parents. They start living separate. They do not live with their parents, unlike in Pakistan and India also. In Pakistan and India, children live with their parents. They take care of them when they are old. But in Western countries, these things do not happen. The concept of marriage, of legal marriage, is obsolete in Western countries. They do not get married legally. They just move out, start living together, have kids, and all these things show that Western social system is completely destroyed. This is the reason, students, that you would observe that the rate of heinous crimes is very high in Western countries. People commit heinous crimes. For example, their rate of rape crime is very high. People commit crime of cannibalism. I don't want to scare any of you, but have any of you ever heard about Jeffrey Dahmer? He was an American serial killer, a cannibalist who used to eat people. It is very disgusting to even think about it. Then Ted Bundy, he was also a sex offender. Then Henry Lee Louise. Henry Lee Louise is known as the person who has the highest toll of killing people. He was a serial killer. So these are the evils of Western system. These are the evils of Western political and economic system. Well, students, in Western countries, the economic system that they have designed is based on the model of capitalism. There is a system of capitalism. Allama Iqbal critiqued on this system also. He believed that this system is exploitation of poor, exploitation of the labor class. But I would not go in detail of this system in this lecture here. We would discuss this in detail in IR course, International Relations. We would study this in detail there. We should not discuss this here. So these all are the evils of Western system, students, and I wanted to share it here because if any of you think that we are living in a very bad society, so students, don't think like that. We are living in an Islamic country, and we are privileged. There are many good things around us, and we should focus on these things. Okay, so Allama Iqbal actually did an analysis of all these systems of West. He said that there are evils. Evils are raising their heads because in West, people have segregated the religion and the state. People have divided these two things. Now their spiritual world is different and their temporal world is different. Allama Iqbal said the division of spiritual and temporal worlds has seriously affected the political and religious ideas in the West. Students, in 1648, with the Treaty of Westphalia, Europe actually segregated religion and state. This happened in 1648, and this is the thing that Allama Iqbal is talking about here. He's saying that you have divided these two worlds, and now you will see evils of this division. So Allama Iqbal said that this kind of system is not possible in India. He asserted that Western democracy is not applicable in India because in India, there are people belonging to different ethnicities, people belonging to different religion and different nations. There are Hindus and there are Muslims. And both the nations were trying to develop their own religion, their own nation. Both the nations were striving hard for implementation of their law. So it was not possible for any of the nation to quit on their goals. Hindus were not ready to live in a society where Islam was implemented, and Muslims, on the other hand, were also not ready to live in a society where Hindu Raj was implemented, and this was not possible logically. Iqbal questioned as to why the two major nations in India had failed to reach a compromise and why all attempts to unite them had ended up in failure. Because it was not possible. It is not possible that Hindus and Muslims start living in a state peacefully. India was multi-ethnic, and people were belonging to different religion and nations. So this is the thing that Iqbal tried to explain in his Allahabad Address. He explained the evils of Western political and economic system, and he explained that the implementation of Western democracy is not possible in India because India was inhabited by people belonging to different religion, different nation, different ethnicities. So he gave the idea of a separate state for Muslims. Okay, students, so in this slide, I have designed these figures so that you people can understand, can make a better understanding of Allama Iqbal's view, how Allama Iqbal viewed the Islam and what was his philosophy of Islam and what was his point. I'll try to explain it and I'll try to make it simple for you. Students, Allama Iqbal asserted the importance of Islam in life of Muslims. Allama Iqbal opined that Islam, unlike all the religion of West, is a complete code of life. It's not just about the sacred life of an individual. It's not just about some rituals, some kind of ibadat, some social customs. No, it's a complete code of life. And it provides a political system also. It encompasses both the individual life and the collective life also. If you see right here on the left, I have designed it. This is the flowchart of a religion. Students, what religion gives you? The religion, I'm talking about all the other religions, not Islam, except Islam, excluding Islam, religion gives you some rituals, some ibadah. It covers only the sacred life of an individual. And these are the practices that people were doing in western part of the world. In West, religion was the private affair of an individual. The collective life was not part of their religion. But Allama Iqbal said that things do not work like this in Deen-e-Islam. Islam covers both the individual life of a person and the collective life also. It gives you all the rituals, ibadah, social custom, and in addition to these things, it also covers all the mundane affair. It gives you the social system, it gives you the economic system, and it gives you the political system also. All these systems. It is a complete code of life. So, if you implement this kind of system in your state, in your life, you can definitely not segregate the state and church, because Deen-e-Islam provides all the rules for the state. In fact, Deen-e-Islam is the code to run Islamic state. So this was the point given by Allama Iqbal in Allahabad Address, that Deen-e-Islam is a complete code of life and Islam is very important in the life of Muslims. So it was not possible for Muslims to just abandon their deen and live in a state where Hindu Raj was implemented. Muslims needed a state where they could implement the social system provided by Islam, the economic system provided by Islam, and the political system provided by Islam. And in presence of Hindu majority, it was not possible. So this was the main idea of Allama Iqbal's Allahabad Address. I hope that I have made myself clear and all my listeners understand now that what Iqbal was trying to say. Okay, students, now I have explained very explicitly what was Allama Iqbal's view on Islam, what he was trying to explain, and what message he was trying to give to British government. Now, students, we are going to study some of the quotes, some of the messages of Iqbal in which he's trying to deliver his message to other leaders of India, other Muslim leaders, and this is very interesting. I read these things in Trek to Pakistan book by Ahmed Saeed. Students, I've explained it in the previous slide that it was not possible to implement Islamic system in a country with Hindu majority. This was the pretext of the demand of a separate state for Muslims, because Iqbal believed that Muslims need the application of Islamic system in their country. They need their Islamic political system, they need their Islamic economic system, and they need their Islamic social system. But students, think yourself, was it possible in India? Muslims of India could never have been able to implement their Sharia law in India. So, Allama Iqbal asserted that it is not possible to implement Islamic system in a country with Hindu majority. Then, in 1937, Iqbal wrote to Jinnah that after a long and careful study of Islamic law, I have come to the conclusion that if this system of law is properly understood and applied, at least the right of subsistence is secured to everybody. But the enforcement of and the development of the Shariat of Islam is impossible in this country without a free Muslim state or states. Students, this is very interesting. Allama Iqbal wrote this to Jinnah, the leader, the founder of Pakistan. And this is the point that I'm trying to explain since the beginning of this lecture. Allama Iqbal is saying that the enforcement of and the development of the Shariat of Islam is impossible in this country without a free Muslim state or states. This is the reason that Muslims need Pakistan. On another occasion, November 22, 1937, Allama Iqbal said to Sayyid Abul Hasan Ali Nadwi that had not there been the struggle of Sheikh Ahmed Sirhind, Shah Waliullah, and Aurangzeb, the Hindu civilization and philosophy would have devoured Islam. A nation that does not have its state cannot preserve its civilization and religion. Religion and civilization survive only due to power and authority. Therefore, Pakistan is the only solution to the problems of Muslims, including their economic problems. Students, how beautifully Iqbal has explained that why Muslims need their own state. How beautifully he has argued that the only solution to the problems of Muslims is a separate state for Muslims. So this is the reason that Iqbal demanded a separate state for Muslims, because it was not possible for Muslims to live in a state under Hindu Raj. Okay, students, I have explained in much detail the viewpoint of Iqbal and the message of Iqbal, the pretext behind the demand of separate state for Muslims. Now, students, we are going to start in real the Allahabad Address of 1930, the salient features of Allahabad Address 1930. Here we're going to study what Allama Iqbal delivered and what he said in that address. But students, Alhamdulillah, I have explained everything before even starting this address. I'm definitely sure that now all of you would be able to comprehend every single word that I'm going to explain in the next few slides, okay? Students, Allama Iqbal actually gave the idea of a separate state in Allahabad Address. He stressed the role and importance of Islam in life of Muslims. In this address, he explained the nature of religion Islam. He explained that Islam is not only a religion that gives human some ibadah, some rituals. No, it is a complete code of life. It gives all systems to live in this world. It encompasses sacred as well as mundane affairs of a human life. Then he said, Islam does not believe in segregation of religion and world. No, Islam encompasses all the worldly affairs also. Islam tells us how to drink water, how to sit, how to walk, how to greet other people, and the laws of getting married, the laws of getting divorced, how we in fact even how we should conduct the funeral of a person when a Muslim dies. So Islam does not believe in segregation of religion and world. Islam encompasses sacred as well as mundane affairs. This is how Allama Iqbal explained the religion of Islam. Moreover, he said that we Muslims, in fact the Islam, does not believe that religion is a person's private affair. No, not at all. Because in West, Allama Iqbal spent some time in West, and in West, people believe that religion is only a person's personal affair, private affair. But no, here we do not believe that religion is just a person's private affair. No, we do not believe in such things. We believe that religion is a code of our life. And we get all rules of life, all laws, everything from the religion Islam. Because Allah has sent this religion for betterment of His people. Then Iqbal stated in Allahabad Address, in Islam, God and the universe, matter and spirit and state and church are organic to each other. We cannot separate these things. He opined that the division of spiritual and temporal worlds has seriously affected the political and religious ideals in the West. He stated Islam is itself destiny and will not suffer a destiny. He stated that Islam is the destiny of Muslims, and achievement of this destiny was not possible in India with Hindus. So these were all the arguments behind the demand of a separate state for Muslims. Continuing with these salient features of Allahabad Address 1930, Iqbal opposed the idea of single Indian nation. Iqbal promoted the ideas of Sir Syed Ahmad Khan, and Sir Syed Ahmad Khan gave the theory of two nations. Iqbal believed that there are two different nations in India, that is Hindus and Muslims, and these two nations can never be amalgamated into a single nation because both of the two nations can not abandon their religion just to get united with the other nation. Allama Iqbal stated, India is a continent inhabited by people belonging to different races, communities, and religions. Moreover, they speak different languages. For this very reason, the application of Western democracy in India by ignoring various religious groupings is impossible. Students, this is very interesting, and this is the soul of Allahabad Address. Allama Iqbal gave two major ideas in Allahabad Address. First, he said that Western democracy, application of Western democracy is not possible in India because India is inhabited by different nations. There are Muslims and there are Hindus. And both the nations have their own religion. And both the nations are striving hard for the implementation of their own religion. So, the application of Western democracy is not possible in India. This was his first point. The second point that he gave was that Muslims cannot live with Hindus because Muslims have their own religion, and their religion is complete code of life. They need a state where Muslims can implement their social system, Islamic political system, and Islamic economic system. So Muslims cannot live with Hindus, since the implementation of these systems was not possible in a country that was majorly inhabited by Hindus, which means India. The implementation of Islamic system was not possible in India. So Allama Iqbal stated that first, the application of Western democracy is not possible in India. Second, that Muslims cannot live in India because India was majorly populated by Hindus, and Muslims could not implement their own religious systems in India. And then he said, I would like to see the Punjab, NWFP, Sindh, and Balochistan amalgamated into a single state, self-government within the British Empire or without the British Empire. The formation of a consolidated Northwest Indian Muslim state appears to me the final destiny of the Muslim, at least of Northwest India. Now students, do you see that how strong arguments Allama Iqbal presented? These were his argument behind the demand of separate state for Muslims. Okay students, now we're going to study what was the reaction of Hindus on Allahabad Address, how they reacted. Well, they reacted as they were supposed to, they were expected to react. They reacted negatively. Hindus raised a great hue and cry at the address. Hindus held Muslims and British government responsible for the tensions between Hindus and Muslims. They accused Iqbal of the failure of roundtable conferences, and Hindu press also did agenda against Iqbal. Hindu press criticized Iqbal for this address. A Hindu newspaper, Pratap, wrote an editorial against Iqbal under the title A Dangerous Muslim of Northwestern India. They called Iqbal a dangerous Muslim of Northwestern India. Then a famous Bengali leader, Bipin Chandra Pal, wrote in an article that Iqbal and his companions are still dreaming of that period when India was under the occupation of the Muslims. So this is how Hindus reacted. They reacted negatively. They did not like the idea of a separate state for Muslims. Okay students, now let's study how Muslims reacted to the Allahabad Address of Allama Iqbal. Well students, Muslims liked what Allama Iqbal presented in the address. Muslim press supported the views of Iqbal. The Daily Inqilab and the Daily Hamdam, these two were the newspapers of Muslims, and they ardently supported the views of Iqbal. Here I have added a paragraph from one of the editorials of the Daily Inqilab. When I was studying the book, this chapter, the Allahabad Address chapter from the book Trek to Pakistan, I enjoyed it very much. I liked it, so I thought, why not add it in the lecture? In one of the editorials of the Daily Inqilab entitled Iqbal and the Hindu Press, is the demand for freedom by the Muslims unjustified? The writer is saying that it is amazing that those who are relentlessly demanding from the British to quit India so that they could benefit from freedom and independence by establishing a government of their own according to their culture, tradition, and propensities are not prepared to give the Muslims any such rights and privileges. If the Hindus are eager to establish Hindu Raj in India on the basis of their majority without caring for the least for the Muslims, and then the Muslims also have the right to strive for a Muslim state consisting of the Punjab, Sindh, Balochistan, and the NWFP. Students, just try to understand it. Did you people observe that how beautifully this editorial, the writer justified the demand of Allama Iqbal? The writer said that on one hand, Hindus are demanding from the British to quit India so that they can establish their own government according to their own culture, their own tradition, their own religion, but they are not ready to give the Muslims any such rights and privileges. They are not ready to give Muslims their rights. So this is justified for Muslims also if they demand their separate states from Hindus. Very sagaciously, this person, the writer, tried to justify the demands of Allama Iqbal in Allahabad Address. When I studied this, I enjoyed a lot, and I liked this paragraph very much. I hope all of you understood what the person is trying to say in this editorial, in this little paragraph of editorial. Okay, students, now this slide discusses the importance of Allahabad Address. How Allahabad Address is important for Pakistan movement. Well, students, it was Allahabad Address when a Muslim leader gave the idea of a separate state from the platform of Muslim League to the British government of India. It was the time when the idea was given publicly. Allama Iqbal made British government realize that it is not possible for Hindus and Muslims to live unitedly in India. And Muslims definitely need a state of their own. Then, student, it was Allahabad Address that traced a path for Muslim leaders to fight for independence. Allahabad Address gave the idea of a separate state for Muslims, and then Muslim leaders started working. They started making efforts for fulfillment of this dream of Allama Iqbal. Then they did efforts for independence of Pakistan, and then Pakistan came into being. Then, students, Allama Iqbal made Muslims realize the importance of religion in their lives. Allama Iqbal gave these ideas. Allama Iqbal tried to explain this to Muslims, that their religion is a complete code of life. So they need a state where they can implement Sharia law. And it is not possible until they get their own state. Allama Iqbal explained this to Muslims, that in Islam we cannot separate the church and state. I've explained this in much detail in previous slides. Then, students, Allama Iqbal made Muslims realize that their religious freedom, their religious liberty is at threat in India. if they live in India and Hindus become successful in making a Hindu Raj in India, Muslims would be at risk in India. They would not be able to live their life in accordance with the rules and laws of Islam. They would not be able to implement Islamic law in their life. This was the fear in Allama Iqbal's heart and the hearts of all other Muslim leaders. So it shows that Allahabad Address is of huge importance in Pakistan movement. So students, this is the end of today's lecture. Today we studied Allahabad Address of 1930. It was presented by Allama Iqbal, and in this address the idea of a separate state for Muslims was given for the very first time by Allama Iqbal from the platform of Muslim League, and I tried to explain things very explicitly. I tried to make things simple, and I hope that all of the listeners are now able to comprehend every single point of this address. I hope that all of you understood it very well, and now it would be very easy for all of you to memorize this address, Allahabad Address. And this is the end of this lecture. Students, stay focused on your studies, stay focused on your goals. In the next lecture, we would study roundtable conferences and the Indian Government Act of 1935. Till then, students, thank you, Allah Hafiz, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel Knowledge Realm.